All right. I think we'll start. I think most people are here. So I'm Jade Bashford. I work for the Real Farming Trust, which is a small charity interested in social justice for food and agroecology. Um, so we're putting on a little series of webinars over the next few weeks. Uh, and I should say it's funded by the National Tree Community Fund. We particularly wanted to do this one because it's such an interesting model and so valuable. You can do a lot of work helping people start up small growing schemes, but unless they've got a decent route to market, they never thrive. And what's interesting about this model is that it's dealing with the bit in between the farm and the consumer, which is so often controlled by the supermarkets, and everybody loses power in that case. So in this case, the retailing is owned and controlled by the community. And then when you ask that community, instead of supermarket shareholders, what's important to them, they can start talking about the kind of food they want to eat, how they want people to access it, the kind of farms they want to support, and so on. And they come up with quite different answers to when you ask supermarket shareholders the same questions. And that infrastructure between the farm and the consumer has been fairly thoroughly destroyed by the supermarkets, and it's very difficult for small farmers to operate without it. And high streets, as you know, will be much depleted as a result. So it's a really interesting model because it's owned and controlled by the community and really operates in that space where we need more action at the moment. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to hand over to the marvellous Beth, who's going to do a really nice job, I think, of running the webinar. Over to
Thanks, Jade. And yeah, a big thank you to Jade, who has been a champion of ours and mine personally for a long time. And thanks to Amelia as well, who's doing all the amazing tech stuff in the background, because Jade and I certainly don't feel like that's our area of strength. Yeah, I'm Beth. I'm one of the co-founders of Carrick Greengrocers, and I'm just going to share some slides, which one of our directors, Hannah, made. Again, graphic slide things are not my area of skill. So no, that is typical. Dog is going to bark. I knew that would happen. Come on.
Amelia, are you recording already? Amelia, can you record for us? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's recording.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So we'll share the recording at the end, and I'll put in the chat where you'll find the recording. It'll be it'll take a few days for us to get it on there, and then if you want to share that recording with your friends who couldn't make it today, that'd be great.
Sorry about that. It's always typical. As soon as you start speaking on a presentation, somebody walks past, and my little tiny dog, who feels like he's an Alsatian, has to make himself known. So anyway, he's outside the room now. So can you see those slides okay? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Lovely, thank you. This is our beautiful logo for Carrick Greengrocers, which was made and designed by one of our members before he was a member, before we had membership. This strapline, community owned, locally grown, was something whenever we started to talk about what we wanted to be called. We had, we did all the kind of brainstorming around all those kind of keywords like nourish and thrive and green and fresh and all those things. And then we had a visit from somebody who would become our kind of primary local grower, Chris Dobbs. And one of us said, actually, like Carrick Greengrocers, like it does what it says on the tin, that's what we should be called. And then Chris said, yeah, it's kind of, it's community owned, locally grown. And we went, that's it. So there's kind of I don't know, like a kismet or a magic that happens sometimes whenever you're sitting with people. Actually, the answer is staring you in the face. Here we are. This is some of the things I'm going to kind of talk through today. This photograph at the top here is our 9 original co-founders and directors, joined by Tiziana O'Hara, who works for, or who is Cooperative Alternatives, which is the kind of cooperative support infrastructure body in Northern Ireland, across the water where many of you are. That'll be provided by Cooperatives UK, but here it's Cooperative Alternatives. And yeah, so I'm going to talk through kind of our journey, what matters to us, and give you some information about like why a community benefit society, which I think will be of interest to lots of you as well. So we're going to start. I'm going to ask Amelia to share a video created by our brilliant shop manager, Brooke.
And just a reminder, the sound, if everyone at home listening turns the volume up on their computers so they can hear the video.
Good thing.
Now I'm having a technology moment. Where is it?
Okay.
Here we go. That's classic. You test it before and it works, and then it doesn't work. Let me reopen it.
Beth, there's a question in the chat you could answer whilst we're waiting, which is how big is Carrick?
Greengrocers is a
Oh no,
community-owned
wait,
business with
hold
over
that
400
question.
shareholders. The shop is run by a board of directors.
I'll start it again. So,
Greengrocers is a
hopefully.
community-owned business with over 400 shareholders. The shop is run by a board of directors, a group of volunteers, and a shop manager. A range of fresh fruit and veg, like our stuff grown by Chris Dobbs just outside Carrick. He is no dig and chemical free. We also have loads of coffees, jams, chutneys, butters, apple juices, and kombuchas, and lots more, all coming from local suppliers all around Northern Ireland. Our main goal is to provide local, healthy options to the community, and to help do that, we offer a friendly food club that offers a 50% discount to lower income families to ensure they have access to healthier foods on an affordable price. You can find our shop at the end of West Street in Carrickfergus.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amelia. I'm really delighted that Brooke made that video for us. And I'm just going to go back and share. So, who are we? So, Carrickfergus is a town, and to answer the question, of about 40,000 people on the shoreline of Belfast Lough, 10 miles northeast of Belfast, which is the main city in Northern Ireland. It is the first town on the route to the north coast, so many of you will have heard of the Giant's Causeway, one of our main tourist attractions, and a wonderful, wonderful natural place to visit, and would encourage everyone. I always encourage everyone to come to Northern Ireland, but you really should, not just because Carrick Greengrocers is here, although why not? That's a good enough reason. The town of Carrickfergus, the kind of main tourism within Carrickfergus, is a castle that was erected in 1177. That's the kind of main tourist attraction in Carrickfergus. And Carrick, it's so I will use Carrick and Carrickfergus interchangeably because I can't help myself. They're the same place. Just if you're local, you will talk about Carrick. Yeah, so Carrick had several industries that grew up in and around during the 20th century, but most did not survive. Like many places, many towns across the UK did not survive the recession in the 80s. And the town itself, in many ways, has really struggled as a result of that economic catastrophe. Most notably in the decline of the town centre or the high street as a retail centre. And that's a really common concern when you talk to people who live in Carrickfergus. That's something that comes up again and again, that the town centre is dead. There's no shops, there's no reason to go there. And it's really, people really remember when there was a thriving high street, a thriving town centre, and it's something that people really want to get back to. But it's I think probably much harder to get back to that than well, not that a lot of, I was going to say that a lot of people realise that's not the case. It's very hard to kind of to bring back a thriving town centre than we would hope. Let me see. So this is where Carrickfergus is. This is a lovely graphic of the castle, thanks to Hannah. Our journey to opening a greengrocer started with an organisation, a charity called Positive Carrickfergus, which is a charity set up by one of our co-directors, Lee Robb, a few years ago, whenever she was feeling, I suppose, like there was lots of really great things about Carrickfergus, but the story that people tell about Carrickfergus is always very negative. And I would imagine that if lots of you won't have heard of Carrickfergus apart from coming here today, but if you have, probably you've heard things about paramilitarism and kind of violence in different ways. But actually, it's a town like any other. It has people who have got enormous capacity to do great things. We just need the kind of belief that it's possible and the things to really kind of get behind as communities. So Positive Carrickfergus worked with the council within Carrick and with Sustainable Food Places to have some conversations about food and sustainable food in Carrick. And what came up again and again in those conversations were people lamenting that there was no greengrocer left in the town. So there are, I think, 5 supermarkets on the outskirts of Carrickfergus, all the usual names that you'll all know. But the last greengrocer closed about 15 years ago. And it was really a thing that people felt really strongly about, that they wanted to be able to buy good local veg, but there was nowhere to do it without leaving the town. So driving out to kind of farm shops or to other towns. And Positive Carrickfergus then through Lee sort of asked the question, what about a greengrocer? What about a community-owned greengrocer? I think, and Lee would say herself that she really expected people to say, I'm sure that would never work. No, I'm not interested in that. And nobody did. Everybody went, oh, that would be amazing. That would be interesting. How does that work? So that was the start of the journey of 9 of us coming together. We, within that 9, all kind of very different backgrounds, I guess, very different, probably very different political opinions, very different economic backgrounds, very different expertise and jobs, but all either with a shared interest in sustainable food and good food, or with the love of Carrickfergus and wanting to make things better, and in most cases both. We started, I would say, probably just a bit more than 3 years ago, started meeting every 3 weeks on a Thursday night to knock about this idea. And it's, I think, really important to say that we were supported from the beginning with support from Cooperative Alternatives, and that's really key to have someone with that kind of broad expertise in different types of organisations, different types of cooperatives, but also someone who's able to kind of keep you on task a little bit. So somebody who's able to come on the journey with you, help with those kind of early stage conversations about kind of agreeing your values and talking about values and trying to understand why we're all here and what we want, what we don't want. And I'll give you an example because I think it's a really helpful one. When we were talking about shared values, one of our co-directors said, you know, I would really like this to be like a kind of traditional greengrocer. And some of you will know that traditional is a word in Northern Ireland that holds a lot of meaning in terms of our conflict and the legacy of the conflict. So some of us then had a reaction to that word traditional. I was like, don't like it. Like, oh, right, well, what do you not like about it? What's the problem? I suppose what I mean is like kind of old fashioned. And other people didn't like the term old fashioned because it's harking back to some values that some people didn't connect with. And then we got to, I suppose I mean like the sort of place I would have went to with my granny, and done the shopping, with my granny. And then you see everybody start to go, okay, right, I get it. We can build from there. We can work from there. Um, and when we went through that process of designing the logo and thinking about what we wanted the shop to feel like, having somebody like Tiziana with us to be able to kind of coach us through those early conversations where we didn't fully know each other properly yet. We didn't necessarily have an enormous amount of kind of trust for each other because we didn't know each other. So having somebody kind of work with you and coach you and mentor you kind of through those early stages and enable you to move slowly, but purposefully is really important. So Tiziana had that kind of kind of a schedule or a timeline in her head, and she kind of gently ushered us through that. So that support is really key and really important. What matters to us? So Jade talked about there that kind of, or alluded to the kind of mess that lots of communities find ourselves in, where we've got all these supermarkets, or kind of big retail infrastructure, which really shuts out a route to market for lots of small to medium-sized growers who, even if the kind of supermarket model aligned with their values, and in many cases it doesn't, they're too small to be able to kind of enter into contracts with the supermarkets, and also really excludes something which is a key part of our work, which is like kind of micro businesses. So people who are really operating out of their garage or out of their kitchen. And maybe some of those do want to scale up, but many of them don't. Many of them have kind of come to this through a kind of quality of life question. They want to be able to have that balance in their lives, and so we've got sweets that are made locally. We've got delicious like kind of fudges and things, small batch made locally, as well as lovely locally grown, regeneratively grown vegetables. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. So when we talk there about values and setting values, kind of key things were about this kind of trust and compassion for everybody who's a part of our shop. So that's our kind of workers, and that was a kind of key thing that we built into our business plan. Nearly kind of the first thing we built in, which was about kind of fair wages, making sure that our staff are paid a living wage. That's extremely important. That people are paid fairly within our supply chain, so paid fairly and on time, so that people are not kind of sending invoices and having to chase us to pay them and all that sort of thing. That's really key. That we offer kind of meaningful ways to volunteer with us, and that's about having a conversation with people about like what do you want to do, what are you interested, is there something that you're intrigued by or you want to do but you need a bit of kind of support to do it. Lots of conversations like that. And then our customers as well. So our customers are so important to us, and when I talk about Community Benefit Society and us as a community shop, I'll say a bit more about that. And I suppose something that's really important to say is kind of our identity as a greengrocers is really critical. I think we've probably, as I said there, we've got some sweets and we've got some fudge, and there's kind of some kind of business calculations and things like that, which are things which bring people into the shop and that bring kind of tourists into the shop if they're passing by. But also kind of we need to try and hold the line of things that kind of keep our identity as a greengrocer. And I think there was probably a point in time where we were talking about, should we probably had a conversation around, should we have postcards? Should we have little gifts? Should we have this, that, and the other? And there's something about kind of holding your identity as whether you're a greengrocer or if you're a community baker or whatever. So not kind of diluting your identity, but also it's really important that it feels like a greengrocer when you come in, because a greengrocer is quite an equitable space. It's really important that you don't walk in and it starts to feel like a deli. And that's something about people being able to come in and feel like this is a place for them, whether they have a lot of disposable income or not very much disposable income. So a greengrocer is kind of an egalitarian space. It should be an egalitarian space. There should be things that everybody can afford. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as when we talk about our friendly food club. Yeah, Hannah put that picture of me, and that's me with one of our members who came in to collect their certificate. So whenever we were going through that process with Tiziana around what sort of organisation we would become, we decided fairly early on the model of a community shop for a few different reasons. The unique kind of nature of a community shop is that it is owned, managed, and staffed by members of the community in which it's located. That's really key. We think it's really important to kind of talk about ourselves both as a greengrocer in those terms, but also as an intervention in the local economy and in the local food system, but in the local economy particularly. So the success rate for a community shop is something like 92% compared with the average small business success rate of 46% after 5 years. And a key factor in that is that people are more likely to support a venture in which there is an economic and a social interest. So when we started to have conversations, as I said earlier, kind of maybe expecting people to not get it or to feel like it wouldn't work, and we did have some, I suppose, kind of gloomy naysayers, but not many. And most people, whenever we started talking about this idea about a community shop, that you could invest in it as an investment in your community. When we started we held kind of town hall events, so people could come and meet us and talk to us eye to eye, and see our passion and commitment and start to build. So that trust that we'd built across the 9 of us, we'd started to build with the community in Carrickfergus, and it started then to become like, it felt like this was a real possibility. So we held these public events to start talking about community shares and what a community share is. And a community share is basically an investment in your local community. It's not like one of those kind of like buy, sell, share things. It's you're investing in a piece of a business, and that makes you a co-owner. So when we talk about kind of our co-owners of the Greengrocer, that's our membership. That's our 434 people who, over a period of 8 weeks, bought shares in the Greengrocer. They did that because we had gone through a process of writing a business plan, and we wrote that ourselves. We did not hire consultants in to do that. So when you read that business plan, and it is still, we share that openly on our website, so people can read it, be inspired by it, use it, steal from it, borrow from it, take it away, and use it if it's useful. That was an enormous amount of work. But we undertook that because going through that process of writing the business plan ourselves that's where you have to start kind of making those decisions that I talked about around your staff structure and wages and what your markup's going to be on your produce. So by going through that process, it meant when we came to talk to the community about it, we had the answers to kind of questions that people would have, which we wouldn't have done if consultants had kind of written it. We would have felt like this is something that we have to learn, but actually we lived it. We could all answer. I could still answer any of those questions now, 3 or 2 years later, because we lived it for a period of 6 months when we wrote the business plan and the share offer document. Again, the share offer document's available on our website, and that is the share offer document is a legal document. That's the thing that people are kind of reading. And that has all the legal information about what's under a community benefit society, what that means, what the investment means. And there again, working with Tiziana was really critical because she was able to give us that kind of the legal expertise that we needed to be able to write that document correctly. I should just say 10 minutes before I came on this call, I went to try and find the link to that on our website, and there's a problem with our website at the minute, which one of our members is hastily trying to fix in the background. So at some point over the next couple of days, you will be able to go to the website and download those links, and I'll make sure that we share those when they're ready, or whenever the website's fixed. It's a bit difficult. So having done a series of kind of public engagements, having countless one-to-one conversations, we had some focus groups, we had events in our local library, in our local what's called the Talking Shop, which is the premises for Positive Carrickfergus. And then here, this bottom picture, you can see this is one of our events in the town hall in Carrickfergus. So kind of really important to think about different ways to engage with people. Different ways to spread the word. We had really brilliant social media, but again, like social media doesn't get to everybody, doesn't get to anywhere near everybody. And we opened our share offer at the start of April in 2023 and closed it 8 weeks later, having raised over £34,000, which is a really phenomenal amount of money. The share offer, or our share price, we set at a minimum price of £25. Lots of share offers you'll see might have a kind of minimum price of £200 or £200, and there's various reasons for that. I think that kind of depends on the amount of money ultimately you're willing to raise. But there is also something about the kind of the administration of it. And I was the person who did the back end of the administration of the share offer. So all 434 members, people who kind of sent in membership forms, emailed them to us. I inputted all of that information into the spreadsheet. We have a big master spreadsheet of 434 people. And it was profoundly moving over those 8 weeks to see, because we really no idea. We knew we'd done a lot of engagement, and we knew our families would invest, and we knew some people that we knew in the communities would invest, but we really didn't know how it was going to go. So £34,000 with a minimum buy-in of £25,000, and we had, I would say maybe 10 or 20 £100 or £200 investors. We had a couple of £1,000 investors, but mostly we had £25 and £50 investors. So that's people around, I think probably 75% of those lived in Carrick. That's people hearing about this. There'd never been a community shop in Carrickfergus before, hearing about it, hearing from us, feeling a bit of excitement, a bit of possibility, and like this is worth my investment. This is something I want to be part of. So when we closed the share offer, our minimum goal to raise was £25,000. And we closed the share offer at £34,000, which meant that we had to open a Greengrocers. And then it becomes very real very quickly. So that was at the end of May. We knew we wanted to get open that summer to make the most of the amazing summer produce and the kind of tourist season. And we opened our greengrocer on the 19th of July 2023. And that was a complete whirlwind. I can share as well, or I can ask Jade and Amelia to share after our kind of a piece we wrote for our AGM at the end of our first year, which kind of tells the story of that first year, which I can share for people who want a bit more information. Yeah. So when I said before, we see ourselves as an intervention in the local economy, that's very important to us, and in how we talk about the greengrocers and how we talk about the greengrocers with in places like this, and with our local councillors, and with kind of funders and so on. And that's because in the video that Brooke shared at the end, she came outside the shop and said, you can find us at the end of West Street, and she did a shot down West Street. And you might have been able to see that that's a fairly unloved street, maybe. We heard when we were talking about when we got the premises, lots of people were saying, and still say now, West Street's dead, people don't go up there, nothing can survive on there. We're coming up to our second birthday on West Street, and in our first year we had a turnover of £96,000. Our average basket, our average customer spends about £8.50, something like that. So to get to a turnover of £96,000, you can see that's a lot of feet coming up that street. We rent, so we're contributing to the local economy in that way. We have staff, we're contributing in that way. And we have now over 30 local suppliers, all of whom have got this route to market, which many of them wouldn't otherwise have, or which certainly contributes to kind of their overall collection of places where they sell. For Chris Dobbs, who's a local farmer who operates a no-dig chemical-free system, he is able to sell through us, which means that sometimes he literally harvests things in the morning and gets them to us within a couple of hours. He's kind of 10 minutes up the road. When Chris comes in to make deliveries, it's really lovely because often he'll come in kind of when the shop is open, so people have that connection with a local farmer, and they see him coming in carrying carrots with mud on them, carrying celeriac, carrying lovely kale and cavolo nero and all sorts of gorgeous produce. They see him walking up the street. People are kind of interested. So it kind of creates a connection with the land, with farming, and people are really amazed that they're able to buy stuff that's grown so locally. In those first few weeks, we had people, and still do, kind of people approaching us saying, "Oh, actually, I have a polytunnel," which we had no idea about. I grow tomatoes. Would you like some? Yes, we would, because we cannot keep tomatoes on the shelves because people go mad for locally grown tomatoes. You'll know that yourselves. We had someone approach us and said they were growing grapes, and we thought they were kidding. We were like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, no, I kind of have a polytunnel. I'm growing grapes." So we were able to sell grapes that were grown in Carrickfergus. And again, people like it's a kind of conversation starter, and it's a way to kind of really connect and bring people into talking about what's possible locally, and which so much has been removed by those kind of big chain supermarkets. It's really hard to kind of get a sense of actually there's lots that we can do. And now I just want to say a little bit, I do want to leave some time for questions, but a couple of things I wanted to mention are you will have seen a poster for the Friendly Food Club whenever you saw Brooke's video. So the Friendly Food Club is a part of Bridging the Gap, which is a programme run by Sustain, whose aim is to bridge the gap, look at policy interventions and ways to bridge the gap between affordable food and climate-friendly food. And that, I guess, really aligns with our values around good food, good local fresh food should be available for everyone. And we make a distinction. We don't ever talk about cheap food, but we do talk about affordable food, and that's very important. That regeneratively grown food or organically grown food is accessible to people, and people do want it. I've heard people kind of talk about, well, if people are experiencing food insecurity, surely they're not worried about kind of where it comes from, and that's absolutely not the case. People, like everybody, we're all concerned about having the best food we can for ourselves and our families. So the Friendly Food Club, funded by Sustain, means that we're able to offer anything that is regeneratively or organically grown on our shelves at 50% off. And the club itself, we say, is for people who are on low incomes, and that's as much as we ask. Or that's as much as we say. We don't do any means testing. We don't do any kind of, we're not asking people to prove it. It's just, if you think you're on low income and this is for you, it is, you're in. And again, that enables us to have really important conversations with funders and with, I guess, kind of with some statutory agencies in terms of like the council and so on, around the importance of mechanisms like this to make sure that that people, everyone, can have access to good food. So a big thank you to Sustain and Bridging the Gap for supporting that. And then another part of our journey, this is us with the Minister for DAERA. And for those of you outside Northern Ireland, DAERA is our government department, which is the equivalent to DEFRA across the water. DAERA in November launched the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework, and a few weeks before the launch got in touch with us to ask if they could launch it from our Greengrocers, in recognition that so many things that are wrong with our food environment, so many things that are compromised in our food environment are being fixed or being made better by community shops like ours. So things around farming, around the economy, around communities, around eating seasonally, around all sorts of things. We are kind of intervening in lots of different ways. So this was an enormously proud day for us. And in this picture, you can see Andrew Muir, who's the minister. There's me and Lee. And Sarah, who's another one of our directors, and then the two people on the end are two of our suppliers, one who supplies us with kombucha and one who supplies us with chutneys and things made with local ingredients, made with often gluts. So kind of doing that seasonal stuff, but also kind of making the best of the produce you have at the minute. That was a really proud moment for us. And then I'll ask Amelia just to drop into the chat just now. We've just this weekend, and I know there's a couple of members on the call, so you will have had the email. We've just this weekend launched an Ubi shop. So Ubi, some of you will know, is a veg box specific like software platform. So like an ordering platform for veg boxes and fruit boxes. Before I came on the call, I logged into our system and can see that over the weekend we have 2 new customers on Ubi. So one buying a weekly veg box and one buying a fortnightly mixed box. And these sorts of things, these are kind of the little wins there's big wins like the launch of the food strategy framework, and then there's little wins which are setting up a system like that, and seeing orders start to come in, seeing people start engaging with that as well. So that was our kind of the latest point in our journey. I will stop sharing my slides there so I can see lovely faces, some of you. And just before we go into Q&A, just a chance again to thank Jade and the Real Farming Trust, and Amelia as well, for doing all the tech wizardry. And yeah, kind of over to you with any questions, and maybe actually save me kind of going through the chat. Jade or Amelia, if there's any questions in the chat, would you could throw them out if people are feeling shy.
Oh, yeah, there was just that one earlier about how big is Carrickfergus?
Yeah, so it's about 40,000 people. And because it's close to Belfast, so it's 10 miles from Belfast, so lots of people will let me see, will commute for work and so on. So that's it. So it's a kind of a commuter town, and then because it's on the seaside as well, or it's on the coast, that lots of people will kind of see it as a place to move to and be able to commute into Belfast.
And we've had another question just come in, which is how many people access the Friendly Food Club, and do they find the prices affordable compared to supermarkets or other outlets?
So I think we're currently at about a membership of somewhere between 50 and 60, which is great. People do talk about finding it affordable with the 50% off. But I will say as well, actually, whenever we've done some price comparisons with some of the big supermarket chains you'll be familiar with, we've actually found certainly for Chris's no dig chemical free bunches of baby carrots that people are like kind of so moved by because they've got muck on them and they've got the green tops. They're very evocative for people, kind of harking back to whenever they could buy those all the time. Whenever we've done a price comparison, often we've found that those are cheaper. I think in one case, both cheaper, even without the discount, than Tesco's organic carrots. And I think at one point, actually cheaper than their kind of standard baby bunched carrots. Not their standard big carrots, but their kind of standard baby bunch carrots. So not organically or regeneratively grown. So it is the case that organic food or regeneratively grown food is often more expensive, but it's not always more expensive. But there's a kind of myth builds up around it then that actually it's always more expensive, and that's not the case. So that's something that's the story we're trying to tell as well. Is like actually, you might be pleasantly surprised, any customer, not just Friendly Food Club customer, at how affordable it is, and also to that kind of affordability point. We try as much as possible to sell things loose. So people really have responded to that. People can come in and buy, 4 or 5 potatoes, 2 carrots. They're not having to buy a great big bag, which in many cases for some of our maybe older customers, which they can't carry home, but also which gives them far too much, and it's wasteful. And people really, there's a lot of talk about people and food waste, but people don't want to waste food on purpose. It's the systems and the system that we live in that makes it really difficult to avoid. So we're kind of trying to combat that as well.
There's quite a few questions coming in now, which is great.
Okay.
So there's one about how you navigate having both paid staff and volunteers. And there was a related question about whether you pay your staff.
Yeah. So our volunteers tend to do, I would say, kind of maybe a couple of hours or a half day a week or something like that. So we don't have volunteers who are doing kind of big chunks of time. Do you know what I mean? We don't have kind of volunteers doing two days a week or something like that, except a couple of our directors who are working. Certainly Lee is doing a day a week at the minute in the shop. But for our other volunteers, it's a less time intensive thing. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else I can say on that.
All right, I'll go on to Rob's question then, which is, can't quite scroll it right. Have you noticed any changes in the local area in terms of new shops or businesses on West Street or surrounds, or with new suppliers?
Certainly. So West Street, there have been a couple of new shops opening. A lovely florist opened a few doors down, and a hardware store opened. But we have had on the flip side, a coffee shop closed a few months ago, which actually has had a big impact on the footfall on the street, and has had an impact on our business, which is partly why we kind of made the decision to we'd been for veg boxes and so on, we'd been doing offering veg boxes through kind of like a Google form and a spreadsheet system, and lots of it being held in well, bluntly, in Lee's brain. But actually the kind of uncertainty on West Street with the coffee shop closing. We also had a big storm, which there's a couple of derelict buildings on West Street. We had a big storm which really affected the safety. So for a time, the street was closed, and closed, but kind of in between the town centre and us, which would be really kind of awkward for people, much longer walk for people to come round to us. We thought that closure was going to go on for quite some time, and that would have been catastrophic for us. As it happens, the council were able to get it sorted pretty quickly, and the street was reopened. But those sorts of things have made us kind of look ahead to getting Ubi, to getting that process set up, so that we have other ways to be able to keep serving people, and kind of diversifying what we can do.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Beth. Then there's two related questions. Do you cover costs from sales? And then how much are you reliant on funding? And do you think you could make it without that? Do you pay staff costs? You've covered that bit already, really, that last bit.
Sure. Funding, it's kind of, I suppose, two bits to that. We had two small grants in our development phase, an Awards for All grant, I think, and money from the local council, kind of between them about £6,000, which helped us to fund our public engagement, helped us with our kind of shop identity, the design, and our kind of some of our setup costs. And since then, funding wise, we've had funding from Bridging the Gap for the Friendly Food Club. But apart from that, we don't have other grants. So we could, I mean, I think we could survive without it, but it certainly has made it possible to do things that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. And I suppose the other bit then is our share capital. The £34,000 that we raised has been a kind of a buffer through those first couple of years. We anticipated spending quite a bit of that money on our kind of shop setup costs, but actually lots of that was donated. We had money in to buy shelves and fridges and things, and actually people in the community, business in the community, really rallied round, and we had lots of that supplied to us secondhand, or given to us, which kind of ties into kind of us wanting to reuse things as well. We didn't need to go and buy a load of new fancy shiny stuff. We were able to reuse stuff that was being dumped, and like that that's all part of that message as well. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Beth. Great answer. Anna, you've got an announcement. Probably best if you make that first time. Would you like to come on and tell us what you do, Anna Jones? You there? Is Anna there? Oh, maybe we've lost Anna. Oh, here she comes. I can see her. Unmute yourself, Anna. We can't hear you. That's it. Now we can.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I was just over there, so I had to run back to the laptop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's just I run a community interest company called Just Farmers, and we do free, fully funded workshops for farmers and growers to help them feel more confident about speaking in public, mainly through the media, but also have the confidence to start a discussion group or have a farm walk or do anything that involves communicating. And we're bringing a special 3-day workshop to Northern Ireland from April the 15th to the 17th. We've got 12 spaces available and there's still a couple left. And I was just wondering if any of your suppliers, Beth, might be interested. 3 days, I appreciate, is a long time to take away from the business. We can put them up, which is funded for them, but if they want to go home in the evenings and farm and come back the next day, they can. But we cover everything: television, radio, podcasting, making reels and videos on your phone, writing, social media, looking after your health, on mental health online. So it's a huge, amazing storytelling workshop. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to plug that.
You're welcome, Anna. Nice.
Thanks, Anna. I have shared it, and I'll do another round.
Thank you.
We're going to finish at 11, so we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more comments before I do closing. Does anybody else want to say anything before I close?
There's one question here which is about stocking fruit or veg not grown in the UK.
Sorry,
No, that's all right. And that's a really interesting question. And we did have one meeting before we opened, or before we started, toying with, should we just stock stuff that we can buy and buy on the island of Ireland? And we realised we probably wouldn't have survived very long if we did that. So we do have fruit and veg not grown in the UK. So things like bananas, oranges, satsumas, that sort of thing, which obviously come from outside the UK. We try really hard, and we do use a wholesaler to kind of plug the gaps, because a part of what we're trying to do as well is kind of increase the number of and diversity of small local growers as well. So while that intervention is kind of being nourished, we do use a wholesaler, but we work really hard with the wholesaler to kind of get things from within Ireland where possible, then kind of the next ring of the UK, and then some things do come in from Europe, but we make it really clear on our labelling where things have come from, and we think that's really important as well, about kind of being really open and transparent about that. We're not trying to suggest that everything in the shop is grown in Northern Ireland or grown in County Antrim. So there's that kind of balance of kind of locally grown and wholesale, but it is our ambition and actually our belief that over the next few years, the balance of that will start to shift, and we will have proportionally less wholesale stuff year on year. That's a little bit watch this space. I'll come back in 3 years and do another one of these, and we can check in on that. But that's the dream, certainly.
Brilliant, thank you. So we'll stop there to make sure we're done by 11. That was fantastic, Beth. Thank you, really nicely, clearly presented. And I know there's people behind you who we can't thank in person who aren't on the course, so passing our thanks to them as well for all the work they've done to help get it all together.
I will indeed. Thank you so much, everybody. It's really really lovely to have the opportunity to talk to you all. And give me a shout anytime if there's kind of specific things you want to know a bit more information on, or if there's something I said you'd like a bit more on. And yeah, our website will be fixed imminently, so you'll be able to get the business plan and share offer if useful.
Beth, if you want to, you can put your email in the chat. You don't feel under any pressure to, you don't mind.
No, that's a very good idea.
Yeah, so we've got a few more of these little mini webinars coming up. We're going to do one on Oranges for Justice, which Karen is on the call is going to do, which is a fair trade partnership with a farm in Italy that supplies oranges direct to consumers at a sort of medium bulk scale to cut out any costs in between, and that supports a farm where unusually the growers are properly taken care of. We're doing one on venison, surprisingly, because there's really too many deer and the numbers are going up massively. So we're doing one on how to get venison into food supply chains and also how to get venison into food poverty supply chains. We're doing one on how to make money from your community cafe. If you're already running a community cafe in the daytime, how to find other purposes for it that bring an income, sort of very practical. And then we're doing one on Lush, which is a means to pay for good quality food to get into community food projects. So you'll get a mailing about those. Oh, look, please can you include recipe days for the venison session? Thank you very much. All right, we'll finish on that one.